Okay, so you're thinking about a career where you're not just working, but, really making a difference, right? A lot of people, when they think like that, they think healthcare, and it sounds like you're thinking, maybe dentistry. Huh.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty interesting stuff. It's not just teeth. There's artistry, technology. You build real relationships with patients.
Right.
But getting into dental school, that's no walk in the park. It's competitive. It can be tough to even figure out where to start.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
And that's where this whole RoleCatcher thing comes in. So you've been checking out their platform, and today we're going to do a deep dive, see how it can help you, reach your goals, become a dentist.
It's true. The path to becoming a dentist, it can be pretty overwhelming, just a lot to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I think one of the things I appreciate about RoleCatcher is they get that. They get that it's a lot for people.
Yeah.
And they set up their platform to make it easier,
Yeah.
to cut through the noise and find what's actually useful and what's going to work for you. That's so important.
Totally. And I mean, there is a lot out there, but RoleCatcher's got these career guides. Have you seen those?
Yeah, they're really in
Yeah, they're not just like generic, here's what a dentist is kind of thing. They really go deep into like different specializations, right?
All right.
So like, I don't know if you've thought about specializing or anything, but they've got stuff on pediatric dentistry, orthodontics. It's all about figuring out what's the right fit for you.
I think that's what I like, is they really emphasize figuring out what you want, what you're interested in, not just here's how you be a dentist,
Yeah, for sure.
It's more personalized, and
Yeah.
I think that's where they're really valuable.
Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Interviews.
Oh, yeah, nerve-wracking, right.
They have a section on interview prep. It's kind of crazy. 120,000 potential interview questions.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
But the thing is, it's not just about memorizing a bunch of answers. It's about like figuring out what they're actually asking. Like one of the questions is, tell me about a time you failed. I mean, who prepares for that?
Right. Like, what are they really getting at with that?
It is.
That's smart, though, because it's not really about the failure,
Yeah.
right? It's like, how do you handle setbacks? What did you learn? It's about those other skills you need as a dentist.
Like being able to adapt, problem solve, all that stuff.
Exactly. And I think that's where RoleCatcher's AI stuff is cool. They give you feedback on your answers, help you sound more, I don't know, polished, I guess.
It's like having a little coach in your pocket or something.
Right, exactly.
But before you even get to the interview, you got to know what you're getting into, right? The actual work.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
RoleCatcher has this guide, Dental Practitioner, the complete career guide, and it actually breaks it down like what a day in the life is like.
Okay, yeah.
And it's more than just, drills and fillings.
I would hope so.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it'd be a lot more than that.
It is. And they make that really clear in the guide. You're like a diagnostician, an artist, even like a counselor in a way. You're building these relationships, figuring out what people need.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
And then there's the whole like talking about money side of things, which is always a little awkward.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, let's be real. Being a dentist, it pays well.
That's true. It is a big plus.
But what does that actually mean? Like how long do you have to work to actually feel financially secure?
That's a good question.
Is it worth it?
I mean, that's what the guide talks about, too.
Yeah.
It's not shying away from the fact that it can be demanding, long hours, difficult patients sometimes.
And that leads to stress, which they actually list as a potential con of the job.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They don't just leave you hanging with that, right? Like, oh yeah, it's stressful, good luck. They actually give you links to other resources, like stress management techniques specifically for dentists.
Oh, that's cool. So they're giving you the tools to actually deal with the downsides, too.
Exactly. They're setting you up for success, not
Yeah.
just throwing information at you.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's not always straightforward, becoming a dentist. Like it's not just go to school, be a dentist, end of story.
Right.
You mentioned that dental practitioner guide. They have a whole section about the different stages of a dental career, right?
Yeah, it's called career stages. And it's really interesting. Like, it shows you how it's not just one path. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You might start one way and end up somewhere completely different, and that's okay. Like, you could be a dental assistant first, get some experience, see how things work in a practice.
Oh, that's a good point.
And then later on decide, okay, actually, I'm really interested in orthodontics, and go from there.
Makes sense.
RoleCatcher does a good job of showing all those different routes you can take. It's not just about, like, here's the job description of a dentist. It's more about, here are all the possibilities within this field.
And they have those little profiles too, right? Of people who are actually doing it.
Yeah. They have these example profiles of, like, real dentists,
Yeah.
and they talk about how they got started, what their path was like, all that.
It's always cool to see, like, okay, this is a real person who's actually out there doing it, not just, some textbook example.
Exactly. It makes it more real, more relatable.
For sure. So, okay, let's say you figured out kind of what area of dentistry you're into. You've got a sense of the career path. Now comes the interview, which can be scary.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And we talked about RoleCatcher has that huge list of interview questions.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are kind of out there, like, what's your philosophy on preventative dental care? Who thinks of that?
Right. It's like, what are they even looking for with a question like that?
That's what I'm wondering.
It's not like you have a whole philosophy written down somewhere.
Exactly.
I think it's more about seeing how you think, Have you thought about the bigger picture of dentistry? How important is prevention to you?
It's like they're trying to get a feel for your approach, not just your knowledge.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Like, are you just going to fill cavities all day, or are you thinking about the patient's long-term health? That kind of thing.
Makes sense. And that's where I guess their AI feedback system comes in.
Yeah, that could be really helpful, especially with those kind of open-ended questions.
You can be like, okay, how do I even answer this? And they can give you tips on structuring your answer, highlighting your experience.
Yeah, and making sure you're getting your point across in a way that makes sense.
Okay, so we've talked about figuring out your options, acing the interview. But RoleCatcher doesn't just, leave you at the dental school door. Is that...
No, definitely not.
They actually give you a lot of resources for, continuing your education, staying up to date, all that.
Yeah, they have a whole section on external resources, which I think is super cool.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
They link to things like the Academy of General Dentistry, and then also, more specific associations, depending on what you're interested in.
Oh, wow.
Even journals, research publications, stuff like that.
So you can really stay on top of your game.
Exactly. It's not just about getting through school. It's about becoming a lifelong learner, which is so important in dentistry because things are always changing.
Yeah, technology is always advancing, new techniques.
Exactly. So being able to keep learning and growing is huge.
Definitely. It really is all about being proactive, isn't it? Taking all this info and actually using it. That's the key.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher gives you all the pieces, but you got to put them together.
Exactly. So what would you say is the next step for someone listening to this? They're hooked on dentistry, they've checked out RoleCatcher. What's next?
Well, it depends, right? What are they most interested in right now?
True.
Maybe they're really fascinated by a specific type of dentistry.
Right, maybe pediatric dentistry or something.
Yeah, so they could dive deeper into that RoleCatcher career guide.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they're ready to apply to schools, so they could use those RoleCatcher tools to get their application in top shape.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Or I always think shadowing's a good idea. Actually spend a day with a dentist. See what it's really like.
Oh, that's a great point. Get some real-world experience.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to read about it. It's another to actually be there,
Totally. Okay, well, before we wrap up, we like to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've talked a lot about how dentistry is always changing. Technology is a big part of that, right? AI is becoming a bigger and bigger deal.
Yeah, definitely.
So here's the thing. As you're going on this journey to become dentist, how do you think AI is going to play a role? Is it going to be a tool that you use, or is it going to completely change what it means to be a dentist?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind as you're exploring, right? So use RoleCatcher, do your research, talk to dentists, and figure out where you fit in this whole changing world of dentistry. It's an exciting time to be interested in this field, that's for sure.
I agree. Lots of possibilities out there.
For sure.